X-Men number 114. Beast and Jean are freezing in the snow of Antarctica. A helicopter flies overhead. Beast sees it and starts jumping up and down trying to get its attention, and he tries to wake up Jean. Jean is all the way passed out, but the phoenix inside her wakes her up, and upon waking starts blasting up the ground, making a huge commotion. She's trying to get to Scott and the rest of the X-Men who've been buried alive under a volcano, but Beast is like, girl, they're dead. They were buried alive under a volcano. Little does he know that they survived. Storm was able to create a blizzard, slowing down the lava, and then Cyclops and Banshee were able to blast an exit tunnel through the rock walls of the volcano. Strangely, though, the climate they find themselves in is very beautiful and not cold. Everyone's like, where are we? And Scott tells them this is the Savage Land. Storm had a very claustrophobic time inside of that tunnel, so her and Banshee take flight to try to let loose, but that's when Banshee's gripped up by a Pterosaurus he didn't expect. Storm's too weak to help, so Colossus and Wolverine deliver a fastball special, and Wolverine shreds the Pterosaurus to pieces. And although this works, Cyclops is not really happy about it. He tries to reprimand Wolverine, but Banshee's like, bro, he saved my life, back the fuck off. And all the while, they're being watched by somebody who recognizes Cyclops from his past. In Westchester, a week has passed, and Jean Grey and Hank McCoy have finally made it back to New York, and Jean Grey has to break the news to Professor Xavier that the X-Men have died. In the Savage Land, the X-Men are enjoying paradise, but a lot bubbles under the surface. Sean Cassidy wonders why Scott isn't mourning the death of Jean Grey. He seems totally fine. But in truth, he's not. He's internally battling a lot of guilt over why he doesn't feel bad about losing Jean Grey. He feels like he lost her a long time ago, the day that she was possessed by the Phoenix Force. He sits by the water, staring at his reflection, and in his reflection, he sees that he looks just like Corsair, the leader of the Starjammers, and he realizes, oh my god, that's my dad. Why didn't I put it together when I saw him? He knew my name. I never told him my name. He had a Nebraska accent. He used American slang. That is my dad. Aurora interrupts him. She's trying to go mourn with him because Jean was her best friend. Jean was his lover. She's like, I'm here for you. I'm a shoulder to cry on. I've got your back. And he's like, I actually don't feel much for Jean's death. I feel mourning for Hank, but not for Jean. Aurora's like, that's pretty fucked up. Maybe you didn't love her. And it is pretty fucked up. I mean, Logan is mourning Jean more than Scott is. Peter Rasputin invites Logan to go fuck some of the native girls, and Logan's like, no, I'm good. You have fun with your threesome, because I'm too busy here crying with a broken heart. Storm finds a nice lake that she can go swimming in, kind of decompress and enjoy the weather. It reminds her a lot of Africa here. But just as she's relaxing, the energy vampire who was watching them in the forest, Sauron, grabs her and sucks her energy, and because she's a mutant, it turns him into this crazy pterodactyl thing. Storm screams and lets out a bolt of lightning, but the X-Men are too late. He's already got her. X-Men number 115. Sauron has sucked the life out of Storm, and Wolverine is pissed. This is the second time now since they've been in the Savage Land that Wolverine has flung himself at a pterodactyl. Cyclops told him no, again. Wolverine didn't listen, again. And this time he really should have, because Sauron has these mind powers where he looks directly into your eyes and then he changes what you see. So now Wolverine no longer sees the X-Men, he sees these monsters. And Scott knew that he could do this because he's done this to Angel in the past, but Wolverine didn't wait to listen. Cyclops knocks Wolverine out with his optic blast. Wolverine's not out for long though, and he's totally hallucinating. He sees Jean being attacked by these monsters. And even he knows that's weird. He's like, why do I see Jean as if she's alive? But he can't stop himself. Scott just keeps taking out Wolverine with the optic blasts. Then he and Banshee double team Sauron with blasts, which does drain him. It drains a lot of the power that he got from Storm out of himself. So he needs to go get more power, and he gets it from Colossus. Scott yells to him, Colossus, change! And so he changes into his metal form and knocks Sauron backward. Wolverine's on his feet again, and Sauron's out of power, turning back into a human. He's about to be shredded, but Khazar, Lord of the Savage Lands, puts a stop to it. Cyclops interjects and's like, wait, it's me, Cyclops. And Khazar's like, Cyclops, you were who I was looking for. So they all sit down. Sauron's cool, he's calm now, he's reverted to his human form of Karl Lycos. And Karl tells him the story about this priestess named Zaladane who came to the Savage Land and turned this man into her god, Garrick. She basically resurrected her god, Garrick, into the body of this man. And they have since built a metropolis in the middle of the Savage Land, and they're forcing everybody to move there so that they can worship Garrick there, and anybody who refuses, they're killing them. Khazar says that he was off-world doing something else, and then he was pulled into this situation, and that when he got here, Karl helped him, so that's his friend now. So Khazar asks for the X-Men's help, and Cyclops says no. And everyone's like, what do you mean no? He's like, no. Magneto survived the volcano. He's going to go after Professor Xavier. Our priority is to the professor. We need to get out of here. We need to go home. We don't have time to stay here and help you. Khazar's like, okay, cool, I get it. Let me take you guys to the exit of the Savage Lands. But the exit of the Savage Lands is completely frozen over when they get there, which is weird, because the Savage Land, although it's in Antarctica, it's warm. And Khazar realizes right away this is from Zaladain's sun god that she resurrected. He's trying to destroy the Savage Lands. X-Men number 116. Khazar was leading the X-Men out of the Savage Land when they realized that something's going on. There's this sun god who's building a metropolis, and he's trying to get a myriad of races inhabiting the Savage Land to learn to live together as brothers and sisters. But he's kind of like forcing them, and if they don't do it, they die. So, not super cool. Also, the effects of this metropolis that he built is throwing off the ecosystem in the Savage Land, and a lot of creatures will probably die. So the X-Men agree to help Khazar take this sun god down, and of course they're attacked by this crew of minions. They are snatching up X-Men, and they end up getting away with Colossus, Cyclops, Khazar, Banshee, so a lot of them actually get like swept up. So now, the remaining X-Men, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and Storm, have to go after them. And Wolverine very much takes the lead in this. He gets the X-Men together, comes up with a plan. Khazar left his tiger behind. Wolverine talks to the tiger. He's like, hey buddy, you can't hang out with us. You're going to have to go back to the little beach area we were just in. Aurora and Kurt are like, okay, this is pretty impressive. This guy's handling business. And they find themselves in this Coliseum, and they're basically making a ritual, burning the X-Men at the stake, one at a time. And they start with Colossus, who obviously turns himself metal as soon as the fire starts, but he's getting really hot. He's literally like red hot metal, and he's worried. He's like, am I going to be okay? How long can I hold this? Am I going to melt? He's like, I don't really know what happens to me under this extreme heat. In the nick of time, Kurt teleports there and removes this shield that they have over Cyclops' eyes that's blocking his laser vision somehow. Cyclops is able to free Colossus. Colossus starts whooping people's asses, and he's just like red hot metal punching people. Probably melting the skin off their faces with his fists. Storm frees Cyclops. Everybody frees somebody, and the sun god Garrick is like, fuck. I'm actually really low power right now. I'm going to dip out of here. So he dips. Cyclops chases after him. Garrick is running to the roof of this Coliseum because there's this like recharging station up there. He and Cyclops face off. They are laser visioning the shit out of each other, so much so that the entire Coliseum starts shaking. And the roof of it that they're standing on collapses. They're falling down to the bottom of the Coliseum. Actually, the ground of the Coliseum is also collapsing, and Cyclops is falling down. Banshee goes and gets him. Garrick is falling down. They're the X-Men, so they're going to save even the bad guy, and Storm is flying down there. She's going as deep as possible, but it's like a tunnel in the ground, it's like a cave, and she's claustrophobic as fuck, and she hesitates at the last minute. She just can't make it all the way down there to save him, so he just fucking falls to the bottom of the pit. So this whole place is falling apart. They're getting out of there as fast as possible. They're worried that Storm's not going to be able to make it out, but she makes it out. She's good. But she feels like a lot of guilt about not having been able to save that guy because of her weakness, her only fucking weakness. And that Garrick the Sun God was an innocent guy before Zaladain possessed him with the spirit of Garrick the Sun God. He was just, a normal guy. So Storm really actually feels very bad for letting him kind of die. But, they did what they could, and they took him down, and they took down that Coliseum. So the ecosystem of the Savage Lands is going to be okay. So they end up on a boat, and they take off. Cyclops, propels them out of the protected Savage Land territory, and they end up in this raging storm in Antarctica trying to get home. X-Men number 117. The X-Men are in the middle of the ocean on a little bitty boat in the middle of a storm. They are trying to get home from the Savage Land, and they're traveling through the Drake Passage, which is this little strip of water between Antarctica and South America, and they're having a rough time. Storm is doing her best to try to keep the ocean and the storm above their heads from capsizing them, but, she's working really hard. She's doing her best. Luckily, a ship passes by. It's a Japanese ship that decides to take these people aboard. They assume that it's probably like S.H.I.E.L.D. agents or other heroes because of the way that they're dressed, and it ends up being the X-Men. And Cyclops is like, yo, we need to use your communication systems. I've got to call home to talk to Professor Xavier. Everybody thinks we're dead. And the captain's like, sorry, communications are down, no can do, you're coming to Japan with us. Meanwhile, in New York, Jean has decided that she's got to leave. She's got to go. She's got to get over the death of Cyclops and the rest of the X-Men, and she can't do that if she's staying here in this mansion that reminds her of these people. Lilandra feels bad for her, and she's like, no, I understand. Like, goodbye, safe travels. Lilandra hates it here, too. She don't want to be here. She's only here to console Professor X because he's under the belief that he got all the X-Men killed. He can't even talk to her. He just keeps reliving this whole experience of what drove him to create the X-Men. He's reliving his memories of meeting Aurora Monroe in Cairo when she stole his wallet. He meets this guy named Amal Farouk, who's this like crazy, strong, psychic powered guy. And this Amal Farouk person is like a very bad person. And he was telling Professor Xavier, we can work together, we can, manipulate people. And Professor Xavier's like, no way. I'm kicking your ass mentally. And they have this crazy side battle in their heads. Professor Xavier kills him, and he's like, I've got to start an army. We've got to be a force for good. We've got to make sure that humans and mutants can work together. He's just sitting there in his office, and he's reliving this whole experience that was the catalyst for beginning the X-Men. And Lilandra's like, babe, they're dead. Like, you don't need to keep reliving this. I don't think we need to stay in this mansion. I think that Jean had the right idea by leaving. I think we should probably leave too. Why don't you come back with me to the Shi'ar Empire? And Professor Xavier's like, yeah, okay. Jean Grey's at the airport, and she runs into Misty Knight, and Misty Knight's leaving too. Misty Knight was her roommate in New York, and Misty Knight's like, actually, I'm going to go help Colleen Wing with some stuff in Japan. And that only just further solidifies Jean's decision to leave. She's like, everybody I know is gone. I need to go and start my life outside of the X-Men. X-Men number 118. The X-Men have been on this ship for 6 weeks. They're finally approaching Japan, and the shit is on fire. Something is amiss. The X-Men have used this time to be training, and they're all feeling a little bit more confident in their own positions in the team. Nightcrawler teleports from the ship to the land in one bamf, which normally would have taken multiple, and he gives Storm a wave. And Storm sees it, and she's like, Nightcrawler's waving the signal, all clear. Scott's like, are you sure? Storm says, if I were not, I would have kept silent. As if to say, like, I trust you, you trust me. Eventually, they all make it to land, and they don't know what caused all this destruction, but they know that Shiro Yoshida lives nearby, so they're like, we need to get to him. But what happened? Wolverine picks up a newspaper, and he sees that it's written that there was an earthquake, and that everybody was evacuated. And Scott's like, since when do you read Japanese? And Wolverine's like, you never asked if I could read Japanese. Scott's like, you're right, my bad. The X-Men make it to Shiro Yoshida's compound, Sunfire. He used to be an X-Men. I don't know if you remember. He was a super asshole. And they're kind of like confronted by his men, and he won't have them stand down. But Misty Knight happens to also be in Japan, so she has them stand down. And Sunfire's like, you have no say here. And Misty Knight is like, actually, I'm here answering to the Prime Minister, so that's above your head. So tell your men to stand down. Colleen Wing is there too. She thinks Scott is hot. But all Scott wants to do is call Professor Xavier to tell him that Jean and Beast are dead, because he thinks Jean and Beast are dead. They think he's dead. But the number to the mansion is disconnected. It was disconnected by Professor Xavier, and the operator tells him this, and he's like, that doesn't make any sense. But Professor Xavier is out in Shi'ar space with Lilandra. He is not at home. Wolverine is in the garden looking for a quiet place to be, and he runs into Mariko, and he meets her, and he's kind of smitten with her, and he tries to talk to her. She's a little bit scared of him. I think he kind of likes that. He puts on a softer side, and then they're attacked by mandroids, which the X-Men do a very good job of taking out. It was all the training. Sunfire gets his ass kicked because he hasn't been training at all, but Banshee and Cyclops kind of shatter one to death, and then Storm freezes one to death. It's actually pretty cool. They're being assisted by these guys that are posing as like garbage men, I guess, and then Colossus takes the garbage truck out, and it seems like a job well done by the X-Men. They're going to take the guys from the garbage truck and interrogate them to see what the hell's going on, and then this hologram comes out of the armor, the shattered armor of one of those mandroids, and he's like, I am Moses Magnum, master of Magnum Force. Tomorrow at midnight, Japan is gonna sink. X-Men number 119. Moses Magnum is fucking with the X-Men. He is strategically causing these earthquakes along the fault lines of Japan to try to sink it. But the X-Men have a plan. Storm flies Nightcrawler to the top of a volcano because there is a hidden base inside, which is where Moses Magnum is working out of. We know this because of the investigative efforts of Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. So Nightcrawler gets in there. Banshee's taking out satellites outside to cause a complete systems failure on the inside. This causes enough of a distraction for Nightcrawler to get to the bottom of the facility so that he can send a signal that the rest of the X-Men will follow to sneak into the base. Cyclops and the rest are tunneling underground, Cyclops using his optic blast to bust through the earth, and Sunfire is using his firepower to kind of like solidify the earth around them so that they have a safe space to travel through. Nightcrawler pretty much has the facility completely cleared out. Everybody's outside fighting Storm and Banshee, who are doing a great fight fucking job at taking out all these people. I mean, they are trying to throw out ultra-low sonic waves at Banshee, and Banshee is repelling them without even thinking about it. He just has his shit together. Cyclops receives the signal, and he's like, alright, this is where we enter. But when they enter, they immediately run into Moses Magnum. Now, Moses Magnum was supposedly a regular man. That's what they were told in the debriefing. But he is strong. He punches Colossus almost all the way off the island. He's firing off energy blasts against the X-Men, which they didn't know he could do. Cyclops is like, fuck, we need help. Sunfire, go get Banshee. Sunfire blows a hole in the edge of the wall so that Banshee can travel inside. In the meantime, Moses Magnum is dipping. He's gonna go use his energy powers to set off all the bombs at the fault lines of Japan so that he can create all those earthquakes to sink Japan. Banshee realizes, oh my god, he has energy powers. I can fight him back with my sonic screams if I can identify the frequency at which his powers are beaming. So Banshee goes all the way outside and he just starts screaming his sonar scream against the side of the volcano, and it's working. Moses Magnum is having to push harder and harder and harder with his energy beam against Banshee's sonic scream. And they push so hard that the entire island explodes. All the little other mini islands around that area are also leveled. A full day passes before they're found by Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, and the X-Men are alright, but Banshee is left in a coma, and he wakes up days later thinking that the X-Men weren't in the hospital waiting for him when he woke up because they were at home with a surprise Christmas party with a welcome back Sean banner. The X-Men spend Christmas together and they feel like a family. Aurora tells Kurt that she loves him, gives him a kiss on the cheek. She checks on Colossus, who's outside kind of moping because he misses his actual family back in Russia. Wolverine sneaks off to spend some time with Mariko. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, Jean is arriving in Scotland to be welcomed by Alex and Lorna, Moira McTaggart, and Jamie Madrox. It's cold in Scotland, but ever since she became the Phoenix, Jean doesn't really feel heat or cold anymore. The plan is to celebrate Christmas at Moira's island called Muir Isle, where she has her mutant research facility that is currently being broken into by that racist sea captain that rented them a boat way back in issue number 104, and he's just snooping around in there minding somebody else's business, and a voice says, "Human, I need you," and he screams, "Oh my god." I guess he shouldn't have been snooping.